Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Cost Analysis as an Engine for Public Procurement. Today's presenters include Dustin Lanier with Civic Initiatives and Rick Gay with Spring Branch ISD. Dustin, would you like to go ahead and get us started?
Rick, I don't have a cool catchphrase like you do, so you'll have to introduce yourself first.
Okay. My name's Rick Gay. I call myself the Procurement Sherpa, leading and guiding all of my end users through the treacherous pathways of governmental procurement and federal, state, local levels. I've been doing this for about 27 years now in public schools. I'm now the Director of Procurement Services for Spring Branch ISD here in Houston.
Well, thanks. So I'm Dustin Lanier. I'm a CPPO. I was with the state of Texas for several years and started a company that works on procurement issues. And we've done that since 2010. And almost all my folks are certified procurement people. And, I spend every day working on public procurement issues. What are we going to cover today? So the topic is cost analysis as an engine for public procurement. We're going to put some definitions on what is cost and spend analysis. We'll talk about what are you looking for in spend analysis, and then go deeper into cost analysis in terms of where you can go down to, how far you can take the work. And then Rick will continue into an example of how he's used some of that stuff in Spring ISD. There's 452 of you. We had 768 signups. So lots of interest in the topic. Love to hear where you guys are in your journey. So the highest level, I'm a master, impress me, down to we actually do cost analysis, and which lets us anticipate what things should cost. We do spend analysis at a high level, but we aren't necessarily doing should cost type of analysis. We do spend analysis, but it's not something that we do regularly, or we're still trying to figure out how to start.
And here are results.
We have 3 masters, Rick. We're going to have to really bring the game. We actually do cost analysis. That's 14%. Frankly, that's a little higher even than I expected. So timely why we had such uptake. We do spend analysis at a high level was about another 21%. We're trying to do spend analysis, but it's not necessarily a regular practice, and we're still figuring out how to start is about 26%. And I think you'll find the presentation is anticipating that we need to spend some time on at least some core of the fundamentals of what's involved in this and how do we work on it, and then building into some of the highest expression of this work. So what is cost and spend analysis? I sat with Rick and I'm like, how do we break some of this stuff up so that we're able to have the right level of conversation with people so that we can move them down into the chain? And so I pulled this graphic together that I think helps to put some picture to it. Spend analysis is where we're leveraging our available spend data to categorize spend into consistent categories using things like an NIGP code taxonomy or some of the equivalents, to be able to then drive that into the ability to look at trends and high level characteristics so that we can then prioritize, well, what's the best category that we need to work on, or what's the most important next thing to do, and drive general negotiation support into the way that we anticipate, like whether we need to renegotiate an area, how many vendors we need, that kind of thing. So I'll talk a little bit more specifically about that. And then cost analysis is where we're drilling down into some of the available indexes and factors that allow us to drive price estimates so that we can get somewhere near a should cost type of analysis in terms of how do we know that that's a good price? And then potentially flowing the use of those indexes into other key performance indicators or way that we can track our performance, maybe give us some early warning signals as we go. Rick, what do you think? Have we hit that topic? What else would you add as to just the high level connection between these two concepts?
One thing, Dustin, that needs to be considered is that, for example, nowadays, if we're using any type of federal funds, some form of cost analysis is required. If you're going to go back and later on be audited, that's one of the first questions they're going to ask for, or one of the first documents they'll ask for, is show us how you came about as determining when you did your solicitation that you were getting a good cost, or what it should cost to purchase this item using federal funds. And then on the backside, you do price analysis, which tells you, did the market behave as we thought it would behave in our cost analysis? In other words, did we get the same price or whatever that we thought we would do in that cost analysis? So understanding all of those factors is really important. The other thing is that your vendor, they do cost analysis and they do spend analysis all the time. If you're sitting across a vendor at the negotiating table, he knows exactly how much you spent, what those things cost, and what the supply chain is providing. And you should too, because otherwise it's not a fair fight at the negotiation table. They have more information than you do, so you should also do it so that you can negotiate fairly and equitably for your agency and get the best price that you possibly can.
Excellent. And there's another slide or two that extends that thought here in just a second. So that's a great way to segment those two. So that was mainly about segmenting, what's the difference between those two topics. And so why make time to do this kind of work? And we've done a lot of work in procurement shops they're maybe executing a lot of the first in, first out purchasing function, but they haven't had either the time or the competency development to know what exactly then is the next best thing to do. And how do we use our spend data as a strategic tool to try to drive this better, more strategic, more holistic procurement capacity? And spend data is one of the most critical components of having navigation points that both allows you to ensure that you've created the right top level of work, that you have a good understanding of what the next best thing to do is. And then now coming into the data points, providing that value by helping develop better sourcing strategies, identify priorities for negotiation, increase your visibility and transparency, have ways to set canaries in the coal mine to look for risk and red flag indicators of things that you need to look at in the future. And then, as Rick was saying, and as we're spending a lot of time on, we're working a lot of ARPA portfolio work for folks, is making sure that you've really re-engaged with what federal compliance means, what it means to have all the 2 CFR 200 compliance and all the activities. And as Rick will go into more detail here in a second, some of the requirements to do cost and price analysis. So now talk about cost and price analysis.
Here in the state of Texas, we follow the 2 CFR 200 318, which says that entities must conduct cost price analysis after receiving vendor responses for procurement at above 50,000. So our limit's 50,000. Some people have 25. It just depends on what your enabling legislation says. But if you're going to go over that amount, you've got to have the cost analysis there for review. And so you must make a determination as to whether the price is reasonable, and you have to document that offered price as fair and reasonable. And really the only way you know that is by going in and doing that analysis throughout your market. We use the Labor Bureau standard from the Labor Department. They have an office in Dallas, Texas. They have an online presence. You can go in and you can download any type of documentation and data that you need to substantiate what you're paying in the market. They break out the market by region. They also break it out by different commodity codes and different categories so that you can really take a look at what you should be spending versus what you are spending. And then you have to create that form for your contracting file, and the form has to be completed after soliciting or negotiating, but before awarding the contract. And that's so that when the government comes in and audits you, they make sure that you have really looked at the pricing and looked at what something should cost. And especially if you're spending their money, the federal dollars, I mean, they want to make sure that you're getting a good cost and good price for it.
Rick, I think that you referenced a specific website in there. One of the chat comments was, can you repeat the website /source?
Yeah, it's the Labor Department Bureau of Labor Standards. They're in Dallas, Texas. It's called BLS.
And I also I do a thing every Friday where I pull forward 5 procurement things and put them into a digest. And last Friday, I believe, I linked the FAQs that just came out from the feds that were extending some of their prior findings or guidance on state and local relief fund compliance topics. And so there's a lot of nuance in there. So if you're dealing with a lot of ARPA stuff, then those are a couple of resources that you may check out. And if you need to put your hands on that, please reach out to Rick or I, or Justin or whoever. So.
And Dustin, as you know, if you're in the education arena, the ESSER funds,
Yes,
there were billions of dollars that were pumped into education and educational institutions. So that's a critical path issue there. So knowing the difference between price and cost, when we talk about price, it's simply the amount of money an organization paid the supplier. And then when we look at cost, well, we're seeking lower costs is noble. It shouldn't be done without some kind of factors that could make costs go up. And we've all seen cost changes recently. We're looking at an inflation rate right now of about 9.7%. But that's an average. And one of the things that you're seeing is if you go back in and look at your supply chain and you look at particular items, you're going to be, I think, surprised at how much some of these items are going up. So like, for example, about a year ago, we got a heads up that the price in paper, copy paper, and in the education field, teachers love to copy worksheets, they copy documents. Paper is one of the biggest things that I have to buy. And we heard that the paper was going to be going up rapidly from what we were paying, which was about $27 a case, to today it's at $47 a case. So we've seen about a 40% increase just in the cost of paper alone. And I was fortunate enough that I have a warehouse. And so I was able to stockpile a lot of paper. So I brought in 9 truckloads of paper, and I saved my district about $132,000 in doing that. But I had to do the cost analysis up front to know, was I getting a good deal? And what was that cost going to impact me if I didn't do this? And so that's how I was able to know that number. And it helps to know that here in Spring Branch, I use about anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 sheets of paper per student. And I've got 34,000 students. So I can look at what the burn rate is on that item, and I can follow through on it. And I'm constantly monitoring the market to see what that kind of item is going to cost me in the future, because that's going to impact my CFO's budgeting to the point where they want to know, okay, if I go ahead and buy more paper, what's this going to cost us? What's the bottom line? So it allows me, by doing this cost analysis and then the price analysis on the backside, it allows me to plan. It allows me to make sure that I'm getting a good price in the market. And also it teaches me, when I'm looking at pricing, it teaches me to keep an eye out on it to see how it's changing in the future.
So that was price versus cost. So then how do we incorporate value as a concept?
So one thing is that I think a lot of procurement departments, when they're looking at the price and the total cost, they're only really looking at, okay, well, what was the price that I paid? And then how much of it did I buy? And what was the total cost? But they also need to take a look at value. And that tells me that when I'm looking at, well, what was the value of this pricing model here? It's the financial benefit, or is there a reduction in price, a reduction in total cost, or an increase in revenue? So, I mean, you have to take all of those factors into consideration. It's not merely just an exercise of, I bought X number of cases of paper, or I bought X number of pencils, or I bought X number amount of gallons of fuel, or whatever. But I'm also looking at that price plus the cost, and is it creating a value for me? And if I move the market and follow the market, if I buy something now, am I going to reap the benefit later on down the road? And that's especially something that you want to watch in commodities that are constantly moving in price. So if they're on the commodity market, so like your fuel, your electricity and things like that, sometimes it doesn't benefit you to lock in, other times it does. And if you're not familiar with how the pricing structure versus the cost is working and what it does to create a value for you, you're not going to know when you should do those things or when you should pull the trigger. So you have to understand how all of those things come together to create that opportunity for your procurement department.
So in that period, then we're just trying to set some high level construct on spend analysis versus cost analysis, how to think about price and value and some of the analysis. So now we'll start kind of going into, well, how do I do spend analysis if you're not doing it? Because at least on the bell curve, there were people who weren't doing spend analysis yet and were seeking to, or maybe didn't do it habits of practice. So I'm going to cover the more general characteristics of doing spend analysis and trying to build a guerrilla methodology to doing that. And then Rick will pick back up after we've set that groundwork into then how you use spend data to drill into cost analysis and price analysis.